Okay, I did it. Okay. So now I need to share my screen. That would be helpful too. Okay. Share screen. I got this. Okay. Can you all see that? Just making
Yes.
sure. Perfect.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. So today we're going to talk about values-based leadership. Now it's one of those things where you hear about leadership all the time. Can anyone tell me like other types of leadership that they have ever heard about? Have you ever heard of any other leadership things? You can put it in the chat, you can unmute, and you might not have.
Yeah, like for me, I only know leadership as like, oh, someone taking role to like manage a group or something.
Okay, okay. Great, great. No, that's wonderful. That is definitely a type of leadership. That is authoritative. Yeah, transformational, servant leadership. You know,
Right.
there are people out there, as you all know, as you study, there are people out there who actually study leadership. Yeah, Kelly, servant leadership, exactly. And those folks, you know, come up with these philosophies and these things about leadership and how we get to certain points. And the most recent one that has been introduced, and when I say recent, it's probably been years, but the most recent one is values-based leadership. So that's the one I'm going to introduce to you all today. And we're just going to kind of take a dive in and see what we can do together. All right, so the first thing I want to ask you all is, what is a value? So you can either raise your hand, you can put it in the chat, like, how would you define what a value is? You're all busy typing. I feel it. Being genuine. Looking for a couple more answers. What is a value? Okay, so Liz says family and community. So Liz, I think that's interesting because those are particular values, right? And we're going to come back to that in a little bit about what your particular values are. Kelly, morals and principles that define your character. Very good. A factor that's embedded or gained its contribution through different matter. It's kind of like a trait that someone finds important to uphold, like how I value in participating in toy drives or something like that. Very good. Very, very good. Okay. So thank you. Thank you all for participating. One's judgment of what's important in life. Yes. Characteristic or trait that a person upholds to make them who they are. Some examples. Yeah. We're going to talk about some of the examples as we saw above, and also like respect and things like that. Wonderful. Thank you all so much for participating and putting that in there. So really, values are kind of based off of what I like to say, four things: your personal stories, your priorities, your passion, and your principles. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to share this video with you all. It's really fast, but I just need to make sure I'm sharing my sound so you all can hear it.
How do you work out your personal values? Values are like a compass that guide us and help us to make our decisions. They are the principles and beliefs by which we live our lives.
Oh my gosh, I'm
So
sorry.
if you want to effectively lead yourself and lead others, then you need to be aware of what those values are. But first, what do we mean by value? Well, value denotes a degree of importance. In monetary terms, we set a value on something by how much we're willing to pay for a product or service. In moral terms, a value is an ideal that we give a high degree of importance to. Values are the moral code that guide us and the priorities that motivate us. If you do not know what your values are, then it's very likely that you are living your life, whether you know it or not, according to other people's principles and priorities. So how do you assess your core values? You can do an assessment of your own values by examining different aspects of your life and for looking at trends. In my experience, it's good to start with examining our personal stories, our priorities, passions, and principles. So let's look at each of those in turn. Personal stories. One of the most instructive ways you can examine your character and values is by looking at the stories in your life. Have a think about, when have you been most happy? Which achievement or experience are you most proud of? What has been your biggest success? What has been your biggest failure? What do you fear most? Which thing in your past are you most ashamed of? When reflecting on a personal story, you can analyse further by asking, what was the situation? What role did you have to play and what did you do? And then what was the underlying principle that made this a good or bad experience? Next, let's look at priorities. We've already seen that values and priorities are linked. One simple and effective way to examine our priorities is to see how we use our resources. Simply put, we invest our time and money in what we value.
Why does he keep saying?
So for money, think about, where does your cash go? Money provides a very tangible expression of what we prioritise. Have a look at your bank account and credit card bills and examine where your money goes. What do you choose to spend more or less on? Time is a truly finite resource. How you spend your time will give you a good indication of what you really value. Take a look at your diary or think back and work out the amount of time that goes to various activities each day and each week. Next, we look at passions. Our passions are the things that drive us emotionally. Our passions either draw us towards or away from something or someone. Often we don't realise these thoughts and they go unnoticed, but if you reflect on your thoughts and your dreams, beliefs and influences, then you'll gain a deeper understanding of your passions. So think about, what are you hoping to achieve in life? When you daydream, what is it about? Imagine that you could have one wish that could be immediately fulfilled. What would it be? What are your theological, metaphysical, philosophical or political beliefs? What are the values of the politicians or political parties that you vote for? When something goes wrong, what or who do you turn to for answers and support? There are many external influences on our lives, and predominantly these are people we know or respect. Think about the following. Who do you follow? Who do you want to be like? What are the books and stories you like most? What are the principles of your family and friends? And that leads us nicely on to principles. Having thought about your personal stories, priorities and passions, you should be in a much better place to assess what your principles really are. What trends do you see appearing, and which words help to sum them up? These should be your principles. The list of words that we could use to express our values is almost endless, but sometimes we can struggle to come up with just the right one. If you want some help, there's a list of more than 150 common principles on the Right Questions website. Just follow the link attached. Once you've looked at your personal stories, priorities, passions and principles, then you need to pick the 3 to 5 most important principles. These are the core principles, the key ones that help you to make those really tough decisions. Once you know your values, you can use them to guide you in making decisions, setting goals and living a more fulfilling life. This is just a summary. There is more you can do in refining and ranking these values, so if you want more help, then do follow the links to more in.
All right, I'm gonna stop there because I'm gonna give you that information. So I love this quote. I think it sums it up really nicely. Surround yourself with people who see your value and remind you of it. And I think that's a really interesting thing to think about when we think about our clubs and organizations, right? You all are part of these clubs and organizations because you do have something in common with those folks who are part of it. And what we're going to talk about today is value-based leadership and how that can come into play with your clubs and organizations. So we already talked a little bit about this, but I just wanted to kind of review. So remember when he was talking about like a list of values, remember there's really no single list of personal values. They're personal, they're yours, right? And you don't always need to think that you need to claim the things that others might think are important, family or honesty or those types of things. It's truly whatever you feel drives you from in out, right? Remember, everyone is different as you think about values, but as we're talking about our clubs and organizations, there might be common values that everyone has within that club and org as you think about the mission of that club and organization. But when it comes into leadership, these are some things we have to look at. Your values aren't the only ones that are going to matter, right? And your values are not better than someone's or worse than someone else's because they're yours and they make you who you are. And what matters is that you're clear about what your values are. Now, let me also say our values might shift or change as we are, in different parts of our lives. So also trying to remember a little bit about that as we explore ourselves. My values when I was back in college, probably some of them still match my values now as I'm an adult and a working professional, but some of them don't, and they have shifted, and that's okay. So again, values. There are beliefs in the importance of specific behaviors and outcomes. The core values are the ones that are going to stand out above all the rest, right? You might also recognize these as your guiding principles, as your personal mission statement when you think about them. But when we think about values-based leadership, it's a way of leading in which the core values play a central and explicit role in everyday decisions and our actions and what we do as a club or organization. So just really quickly, either in the chat, you can put yes or no, or you could raise your hand. How many of you are in a club organization, whether it's at CCBC, outside of CCBC, it could be, wherever, and you have established your goals of that club and organization? So how many have established goals? So put yes, no in the chat, raise your hand. It doesn't matter if you have it. Okay, I'm seeing some yeses. Good, good. Kind of, yes, they still evolve. Yep, that absolutely, Liz, sure. Yeah. Good. So thank you for those of you who responded to that. Kind of, we're still working on it. We have established goals. Yeah, yeah, Jebba, we're actually going to talk about motivation too. So I love that you all are giving sneak peeks ahead and that you are eager for this. But yeah, so we have these goals, right? Now let me ask you, how many of you actually have incorporated the values that you all have for that organization? Have you ever thought about it? Okay, I see a thumbs up. Thank you for that, Ashley. Ashley's down with the Student Honors Council at Dundalk. And Jasmine says yes. Okay. Well, if you haven't, or you're like, Chrissy, I'm not really sure where you're going with this. This is what the next part of our session is going to talk about. So here's a little bit about why values-based leadership is effective, right? So the why shapes the what. So we always say, and I'm gonna kind of not pick on, but use the student programming board as an example, since I'm a direct advisor to them. So for instance, they might come to me and say, Chrissy, we want to take a trip to Philadelphia. And I'm gonna say, great, why? Okay. And so that's where it comes from, is the why. How can we go back to the purpose of the organization or the purpose of the goals and match that with the why? So, you might say, Chrissy, we want, to bring this guest speaker. Great. Why? I always want you to think about the why. Okay. It's also, when you think about the values-based leadership and why it's effective, it's going to appeal to more people, right? When you're looking at core values really touch people. It's a personal approach to things, okay? And so it's going to be uplifting and it's going to focus on the future. It's also more efficient. when you can know about the why and you're sitting there and you're brainstorming and you're trying to figure things out, it's really easy to then come to group decisions when you understand what that means. It also reduces conflict. I don't know about you all, but I'm not a huge fan of conflict. I will face it when I have to, but I get nervous, I'm sweating, like, all of those emotions come out of me, right? Um, but it does reduce that when you can think about these values. And it also can be very reflective. Okay. And we're going to talk about reflection too. Like, was this okay for us to do? Was this all right for us to do? Like, those types of things. So there are some failures that can come about with this values-based leadership. And so sometimes it can be very short term, and we don't want to think about short term, right? This might just be a fear that we have. So I'll use the bus trip to Philadelphia. Maybe that fear is no one's going to sign up, so we're going to have a waste of our money, right? The frustration could be no one is signing up. So are we going back to what the value was? And are we expressing that value to those that we want to sign up for our trip? It can also be very egocentric, where it might just be, I want to go to Philadelphia, so this is why I want the trip. I've never been there, right? You're not seeing everything as the whole picture when it comes to that, okay? Can be very narrow-minded too. I'm only here, which means I'm only going to focus on a couple of my core values within that club and organization. Concealed, where you're not really talking about those values, you're not really talking about the purpose and the meaning behind what you're doing. It can also be very inconsistent. I really like this phrase. You need to be able to walk the talk, okay? Not just talk the talk, right? Does everyone understand what I mean about that? So I'll explain it anyway if you understand. So if I can say something and I say that one of my values that I hold near and dear to me is honesty, but then I'm tiptoeing around and I'm not telling people what I really think, or I'm not telling them how I really feel, then I'm not walking the talk. Okay, I'm just talking at that. It can also become a defensive mechanism, right? Like when you think about this, you don't want to lack compassion for other people, because as we were talking about earlier, not everyone's values are going to be exactly the same. But they are going to be able to hopefully align in some way with a commonality that you all have with that club and org. But you need to be able to do evaluation. You need to be able to say, this worked and this didn't work. And then decisive, okay? What happens too is you can become decisive because maybe you believe your values are more important than others, or maybe you believe your idea is more important than others. And that's not the way we want to have happen, because we're going to go back to conflict, okay? So how do we change these? So we want to change our short-term thinking to long-term thinking, right? So many times if you all come in my office, you will hear me say to you, what are you planning on doing 2 weeks from now? What are you planning on doing a month from now, right? And sometimes that's really hard. It's really hard to think, well, what are we doing a month from now? Personally, a month from now, I think we're on spring break, but that's a whole different ballgame. But I want you to think future, right? I have this sign in my office that says, lack of planning on your part doesn't equal an emergency on mine, right? So it's considered a joke, but it's also one of those things where you shouldn't always be last minute. You shouldn't always be like, oh gosh, what's happening? Did I make that flyer? Did I put in that catering order? Did I do all of this, right? Because you should truly know what is happening for your club, because you understand your mission, your goals, and the values that go along with it. So instead of being very self-centered, you're looking to empower people. You want people to join you. Instead of being very concealed about anything, be broad and open-minded when it comes. Don't be inconsistent, be wishy-washy, like that walk the talk, right? Be transparent. Like, okay, I say honesty is it. I'm going to tell you how I feel about this, and I'm going to be very transparent. Reflection. I don't know how many of you have a common practice of doing reflection. So I can talk about the student programming board, but every time we meet, we reflect on what we did that previous week. Okay, we meet weekly. So that's the first thing on our agenda is let's go through every event that we did. And what I like to say is we talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly, right? We talk about everything that went well, everything that went and things we want to leave as our legacy or as comments for people who are going to potentially do this in the future, right? So, hey, note to self, you need at least an hour to set up for that. We thought we could just show up and everything would be fine, right? So having that reflective part. And instead of being decisive, thinking about being inclusive, including everybody and everyone's different values that come into play. So how do you build this, right? You're like, okay, Chrissy, yeah, it sounds really great. Like, how the heck do we do this? So this is a revolving circle, as you can see on the screen. So first you have to reflect and agree upon your desired core values. You have to figure out what they are within your club and organization, right? And then you have to embed them in your everyday practice as an organization. And then you're probably going to go back and then you're going to have to embed them again. And you're going to have to go back and revisit. And it's just this kind of continuous cycle at times. Sometimes in a semester, you might only have to go half a circle. Maybe you don't have to go a full circle or 2 circles because you really understand your core values for that particular time. So how do you embed these core values into your club practices? Okay. And these are just some areas that I put up here. And if you all have other ideas, please use the chat. I want this to be interactive. And I know this time I've been talking a lot and I'm sorry for that. But you need to embed your core values when you recruit members, right? So when you recruit members, they need to understand what you are doing and what your purpose is and how everyone sees that mission and that purpose. You need to embed them in your decision making. Okay. What events are we going to hold? When are we going to meet? Right. So let's say you have a group of 10 people and everyone, 9 out of 10 can meet at a certain time. Are you going to pick that meeting time and not have that person attend? Or what are you going to do? Because again, what is your value that comes along with that, right? Like, do you want to be inclusive, which hopefully you do? Do you want to include everybody? You know, those types of things. Also in your development of events, right? So if you pick an event, but you go, you know what? I know some people aren't going to like this, or not everyone can attend this, or whatever. If it's part of your mission and goes toward your mission, that's okay. That's okay. But again, reflecting back to your mission, how does this meet that? How are you getting feedback? Okay. So I'm actually going to throw that out to you all. So as, you know, leaders, how do you get feedback about your events or things that you want to plan? How do you get that? I feel like you all are typing so quick right now. From direct conversations and forms. Sorry, it was scrolling. Ask people, do surveys, have a group chat. Depending upon how many people show up. That's actually a really good one too, right? Like you can kind of say, hey, we had 5 people show up for this, but our last event we had 25. So where did we go wrong, right? This is good. We ask, we do surveys. Good. Who signs up on our sign up for, yeah. Perfect. Perfect. So let me ask you a question for those that do surveys. Are you just surveying the people who are coming, or are you surveying the general student population? Right? Because if we think about our clubs and organizations, you need to be open to all students, even though you have a very specific focus within your club. But how do you get the larger population to give you feedback? We ask at general meetings and at our board meetings. Good. So you're differentiating the two. Good.
Yeah, I tried to say before I got kicked from a meeting because I was trying to fix something, but mostly criticism that I received was mostly through constructive criticism, either from our team members or like a person from above, but mostly constructive criticism from ourselves and also from the audience and their feedback and how they respond to our events, mostly feedback to us.
Great, thank you for sharing that, Benedict. Good, and I see this. Members and non-members. Good, email blast. So I think, and I know I'm going kind of specific to CCBC clubs right now, but you know, those of you who are with a club and organization at CCBC, you had the opportunity to participate in Connect Fest, right? And you were able to gather names and emails. And so how many of you are utilizing those to seek this feedback, I guess? It's a good way of saying it. Yes, okay, good. I am trying to read everything here. I think I missed some. Good, okay, good. So just some things to think about and to give you some examples, right? Recognition. I think this is also a huge part of it. How many times are you recognizing people that are doing outstanding jobs for your organization, right? So how many times are you saying, you know what you did was amazing and thank you for that, okay? Or, you know, having a shout out. A lot of you have social media platforms. Are you shouting out to certain people who really stood out to you in some kind of way for the recognition? Correction kind of goes along with feedback, right? So how are we going to figure out what we need to correct and make that correction for the future? Thinking about your leadership selection, you know, who's going to take on this leadership role? Many different organizations, whether it's here at CCBC or outside, will have some kind of hierarchy. Sometimes it's a group, it's a council of folks that work together, but they're still in charge, right? Or sometimes we specifically have a president and a vice president, a secretary, and those types of things. But how do your values and your mission, how are they embedded in your selection of those people is something to think about. And last but not least, your communication, you know, your flyers, your social media, your word of mouth, all of those things need to embed your core values and your mission into it. All right. Oop, I stopped moving. All right, so I'm going to give you 20 tips. 20 tips today for value-based leadership. Okay, so I'm going to go through these quickly because, well, you can all read. You're all very smart individuals. But some of the ones that I love is, remember, you are not going to be perfect at this. Okay, so practice self-compassion, or compassions if it's multiple people. I don't know why there's an X. Reflection. We talked about this a little bit, but mark out time to do self-reflection. Because not only should you be reflecting within your club and organization, but you should be reflecting by yourself too. If you're getting frustrated, or maybe you're leaving a meeting and you're just not feeling as good as you normally would, figure out those values and what values are being challenged by that club, organization, group that you're a part of, right? Keep a journal. Keep a journal. It could be on your phone. It could be a dictation one, whatever works for you, but write down, we go into 4, write down those values that you have, write down and put them in a place where you can see them. Remind yourself that these are the things that are most important to you. I do like this one. Guess what other people might say your values are, and then ask them, what do you think my values are? Because guess what that's going to tell you? It's going to tell you whether or not you are showing that every day in who you are. And it's also, if you think about it, for the club, right? So let's take the club and let's think about, what are the values of the club? Go ask someone, what do you think our mission is? What do you think is important to us? What are our values? See if they can tell you that, okay? I do like this one too. For 30 days, kind of push yourself, score yourself. Did I live my values? Just yes or no for 30 days and see how you do. Who knows? This is a big one. Number 8, relax, listen, don't defend when others give feedback. Because sometimes it feels personal, right? Because you're like, well, that's not that, I didn't mean it that way, or maybe I wanted to do it that way for a reason, right? And so you have to just listen and not defend, which is a really hard thing to do for some people. talk about your values. Make sure everyone knows your values too. It is fine to share your values, especially with those that are closest to you, which would be your family, your friends, maybe your coworkers, those within your club and organization. Number 10 is the identify where you don't walk the talk, right? So here I am talking and saying honesty is one of my biggest things, but I'm realizing I'm not really being honest in this situation. Okay. Say sorry more often and give yourself praise when you do live out your values. Say thank you. Thank you is such an easy thing to say to make someone feel appreciated. Say thank you. Accept that you will fail to live your values at times. There will just be times that that will happen. Okay. Understand what derails you from living your values. Every day, try to find something that you're grateful for. Okay. Open yourself up to other values, especially when it comes to working with others in your club and organization. Don't take yourself too seriously. It's okay to laugh. If you're around me a lot, you will know I laugh things off because that's just what I need to do. I need to let it go. Today, for instance, public safety called me and told me they had my keys and my wallet down at public safety. I went, how the heck did they get that? And I just went, I guess it fell out of my pocket, and I was lucky enough someone put it in. So I'm laughing the whole way down, going, what? This is just me, right? It's just who I am. But I didn't stress out about it. Everything was in there. Get good at picking yourself back up and getting back on track, okay? And remember, this whole process is a lifelong journey, as I was explaining earlier. Yes, thank you. Yes, someone did find it and turned it in. Thank you. Okay, so we're not going to do this particularly today, but I did want to give you guys an idea. He referred in there about a value sort. So I will share this, well, Dan will email this out, but this PowerPoint with you all, and you can kind of see it. But what we typically would do anytime we hold a value session is we would help you identify what values are important to you if you haven't already done that in some other way. So what I typically do is I ask people to get a piece of paper and you make 3 columns, right? Important to me, very important to me, not so important. And then what we would do is we would go through this whole list of values and you would write them in the different columns and start to figure things out about who you are. And I think that's important to do if you have never done that before. And I'm more than willing to share this with you. I will put my email address in the chat. You can email me and say, Chrissy, I would love to do that value sort. Can you send it to me? Absolutely. But I'm just going to kind of go through here quickly to show you some of those values. These are alphabetical, by the way, but you know, maybe achievement is a really big value for you. Again, I'm going kind of fast, but maybe autonomy is something that's really important to you, or change. A lot of times change scares people. Whew, couldn't get that one out for a minute, but sometimes people love change. Maybe it's cooperation or commitment to something that you're doing. Dependability, faithfulness, fame, family, like I mentioned earlier, and some of you were putting some of these in here earlier about like commitment, friendship might be a high value for you. Honesty that I've been referring to a lot here, genuineness, your health might be a very high priority for you. Inner peace, humor, humility. Again, I'm going really fast, I know. Knowledge, loved or loving. Nurturance, moderation, openness, pleasure, power. Okay. Religion, responsibility, romance, self-esteem, self-knowledge, spirituality, stability, service, wealth, world peace, or there might be others that you can think of that you're like, yeah, please send me these slides. That was really fast. Yeah, I'll drop my email in the chat in a few minutes. So what I like to say about all of these values is it might look easy now, but when you start putting them in those columns, you start really taking that inner reflection of yourself, right? Like oh, I'm saying this isn't important to me. However, I do have it important to me at certain times, right? And so I think that it can get to be a little much. And then when you actually get down to it, what we want you to do is identify your top 10. And then once you do that, we want you to think about your top 5. And so all of a sudden you're circling, and all of a sudden then you're boxing things. And then the next thing you know, you're going to star your top 3. And I'm not, everyone says to me, but Chrissy, you just asked me to pick my best top 10. And I'm like, but I need you to narrow it down, and I need you to find what is most important to you. Okay. So like I said, I will send these to you all. Let me put my email in the chat right now if you would like to do this. Also, if you're ever on the Essex campus, or I can potentially get these to other campuses, I do have what are called values cards. And what you can do is you can actually sit there with these cards and put them in physical piles, and work through that too. Let me make sure that's right. Okay, there it is. Okay. All right, so where are we? All right, so I want to do a little bit of reflection, and this could be personal reflection. It doesn't have to be public. If you want it to be public, I would love for you all to share if you wish to share, but it's always, like a challenge by choice. But I want you to think about how you spend your day. Okay, what are you spending your day on? And what you think might be your top 3 values right now, are they in your everyday? Can anyone say yes or no? I'm seeing some head nods. How about if I were to switch it and I were to say, think about the values that your club holds, your mission, your values. Are you showing that every day? And that one might be a little harder. Again, it's reflection. It gets you to think, right? Then, oh, look, I just jumped ahead. You're welcome. So when you think about the values that your club came up with regarding your plans for the semester, are they aligning with your core values? And I would really take a picture of this, take a screenshot, take it back to your clubs and orgs, and have them have a really in-depth conversation about what you all are doing. Okay, so how do they align with your core values is a personal reflection, but how do they align with your club's core values is a conversation that you can have with everybody. Does that make sense? And then I want you to think about a leader that you admire. It could be anyone. It could be someone nationally known, internationally known. It could be someone personal in your own life that no one else would know. And then I want you to think about what you admire about that person. And then once you think about that, I want you to see if you could figure out what their core values are based upon what you admire about them. Okay. So that's a really good example. Okay. So Donald Trump is definitely honest, and his honesty, raw honesty, is out there. Tells you exactly what he's thinking, right? That's an honest part. Yes. Good example. Are there other examples that you all want to share of a leader that we would all know? I'll give you a moment. Okay, Gina, I like Lisa Vanderpump. So what value or values do you think, don't be embarrassed, by the way, it's your leader. But what does Lisa Vanderpump display that would be a value that you think? While you're thinking about that, Gina Benedict, humanitarianism, yes. And a lot of people can fall into that. I get that. Yeah. That is a great value. Thank you for sharing. Okay, so Professor Schrader, she is a professor on the Essex campus. She's ambitious. That's a great value. She's an advocate, great value. So that's a really good example. Jeppa, thank you for that. Good. So if anyone else has any, please put it in the chat. Oh, there we go, about Lisa. Okay. She has vision. That's a huge one, right? That is a great value. She has vision for her business. Open but stern. So I wonder if like open but stern is also just like a relationship. I can't think of the word that I'm trying to look for right now, but welcoming, loving, love that. Love all of that. Oh, and loves animals. That's fun too. Good. Thank you all so much. This is perfect. Yeah. So then what I like to do is I like to challenge you. So if someone picked you as their inspirational leader or person in their life that they looked up to, would they know what you stand for? Would they be able to give this little paragraph that we all just read about these folks? Would they be able to give it about you? And if they can't right now, then use those tools to go ahead and correct that and to change that course for yourself. And if they can, congratulations, that's great. And keep it going, keep it flowing as much as you can. Oh, look, there's my email. On the slide now. So that is what I have for today. I don't know if anyone has anything they would like to share or anything they would like to say. Okay. So we will, let me stop sharing for a second. I'm gonna stop recording too, right? Do all those things, Chrissy. Okay. Stop sharing, number one. And please, if you have not